guys, so today I am going to be doing a sunset beach scene, and this is pretty straightforward. My original video was about an hour and 40 minutes, so I had to compress it. That's why it's sped up and I'm talking over all of this, so hopefully you can follow along. I'm not going to talk through the entire video, but key points I will chime in and I'll try to guide you guys as best as I can. For the top portion, I used a cerulean blue, like a lilac, lavender, and pink. And then right under that, you'll see me go in with coral. Coral is going to help bring up that pink and kind of help with the kind of look of like a morning beach walk, I feel like. So I'm going to add that in. Right there. And then right below that coral, we are going to add a golden yellow. And I will chime in for the next portion once we get to it. Okay, so we let that masking fluid dry, and that's gonna sit there for, I would say 10 minutes. It doesn't matter how long you let it sit. The longer you let the masking fluid sit, the better. So anyways, what I'm doing here is I am working on the horizon. I like to use darker colors for the horizon. For this, I used a very deep purple. You can use anything. You can use turquoise, you can use dark blues, you can use dark purples. I used purple because I felt like that was going to bring out the yellow right there, as if the sun was kind of rising. So I wanted this to look more of like a morning painting than an evening painting, like a sunset. If I was doing a sunset, I would typically opt for more like deep blues, reds, but with the morning, I feel like you see more pinks, blues, and yellows. Okay, so what I am doing here is I'm just adding a deep navy blue to that wave back there. I need to get better at my camera angles, you guys, because I am not tech savvy, but please just bear with me. I promise I'll get better, but I'll try to explain everything that I'm doing. So I just added some blue underneath that purple horizon line that we did, and then I left some bands of white, and that's gonna be where our waves are gonna go. And I'm just gonna keep adding some blue underneath that white band because it'll look like a wave is kind of rolling in. And you can add as little or as much as you want. Just, tweak it to your liking. And I'm just kind of blending it out. I'm not using a lot of water on my brush. I have kind of OCD like that. Like, I don't like lines in my paintings. I make sure everything is really smooth, and yeah, it's kind of silly. I beat myself up all the time if I see a line. So yeah, that's what we're doing. We're adding details in the waves now, and we're gonna start shaping that large white band here in a minute. And we are going to end up adding some mint green or like an aqua. I like to use really sheer colors when I am layering, just because it helps with blending really, really well. You could see that I'm just kind of going across that wave, really, really light layer. And I had this whole segment too on what I did with the pink and the yellow with the sand right there, but I had to delete it because my file was too large to upload to YouTube, and I'm getting really frustrated. So if anyone has any tips over that, I'd really appreciate it. But back to painting. All right, so we're gonna use that same color that we used in that wave, and we're gonna go into the sand. I like to use this color over sand and on beach paintings because I feel like it just creates a nice soft glow no matter what colors you blend it with. You would think that aqua would melt with the yellow weird and turn like a bright green, but it's more of just like a foamy soft green. So I really like to use that. All right, and now we are going in with some blues, and we are going to start shaping that wave and getting movement. Okay, so now that we have added those lines, we are going to soften them out. This is pretty straightforward. I just use a little water. I do one swipe on one side of my brush and one swipe on the other. And I sped it up because it's pretty repetitive. There's really nothing exciting going on except for blending out those lines. You just want to use really, really light pressure is my biggest tip, because you don't want to completely get rid of the line. You want to have a little bit there for movement, and then we're just going to keep adding details as we go. And you can see here I'm adding in the lilac, like purple pink. It's my favorite color. I've used the heck out of it on this palette, and that's going to be a really nice base. As we add some more details, I'm adding some aqua here too. And yep, I'll check back in here in a minute. Okay, so I softened all of that out, and I went in and I used my gouache to add some sea foam. And what I did here is I just grabbed some white gouache. You can use any brand, but you're just gonna go in at the base of where those lines stopped at the wave, and you're just gonna keep adding that sea foam. I changed the camera angle so you could see it. We're going to be adding more white where the waves are crashing down, and that's going to give more movement to the painting. This is pretty straightforward. So I'll check back in here in a minute and I'll go over the next steps. Okay, so what I am doing here is I am going to be adding some value to my waves. I am going to be adding a deep navy blue. I like to add this in between the sea foam. I feel like it gives it more movement and some more value to the painting instead of it just being a flat white over whatever layer we did. So that's what we're going to be adding here. Okay, so now that we've added some details to that sea foam, we are going to go in and add some waves to that top or that middle layer. And we're gonna go in with a deep blue. I like to add a color that's maybe one shade darker than that layer that I laid down because I feel like it's a lot less harsh and I don't have to blend it out as much. When it dries, it's a lot more soft and it gives more movement to the water, if that makes any sense. And when I paint my water, I like to do random swipes and dips and different placements. Like I don't just do solid lines across the paper. I feel like that helps the water look more natural. And I've been painting nothing but water for the last 2 years since I've done this full time, and I am still getting the hang of it. Like I am learning something new every single day, just like you guys will. Like if you're starting on your journey and you're new, don't beat yourself up if your first few paintings aren't the best or if your painting doesn't look exactly like this. That is what makes art so beautiful. It is literally your personality coming out in a painting, and I love that. So here, same concept, but we're using a lilac pink. This is the same color that we used in the sunset. Any kind of pink would work for this, I feel like. I just wanted it to kind of look like it was catching a little bit of the sky, and I'm also kind of blending it up into that blue that we just laid down. Okay, so what I am doing here is I am just grabbing some white gouache and I am going to add some sea foam into those painted reflected areas. And what this is going to do, this is going to look like the sea foam is going back into the waves. This is pretty repetitive and straightforward. You can do any types of lines or squiggles as you want. And once that's done, we're going to add some details. so we are going to add our details now. It was kind of the same concept that we did before with the navy blue and the crashing waves and the sea foam. But here we are adding, it's like a deep wine, kind of a berry color, and we're going in between those white pieces. We're not going on top of them, we're going in between. And I'm using a detail brush for this. This is kind of tedious, but I feel like it's a necessary step to get more movement. Again, I like to do this because it gives the movement, or blah, 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 the painting more movement. And you'll notice that I'm not going all the way to the edge of that yellow with that. That's because we are going to go in with a different color here in a minute. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to add that aqua. We want the sea foam to complement the color we already laid down. And that's what we're going to be painting to the edge of that yellow. Okay, so you saw me pick up some white gouache there after we've added all those details. I like to add just some dollops of gouache over some white portions that may have gotten lost, and then I'm gonna go ahead and remove the masking fluid here, and we're gonna go ahead and do the beach. So for the beach sand, I'm going in with a really sheer light beige. Again, that same concept. If we're going to be layering, we want to do a really light color. And I'm just using a fluffy brush for this. I switched from my flat brush to this brush just because I feel like it covers more base. And that is what we will do here. So what I am doing here is I am adding a purple gray. It was already in my watercolor palette, but you can mix gray and purple together to achieve this. This is just going to add some value to the sand as if it's wet and the waves had rolled over it. And I am just going to keep adding in some wine pink or I guess you could call it maroon. But I am just swiping my brush along and using irregular brush strokes just to get some movement, so it's not just this flat band, and it adds a little bit more dimension, I feel like. And I also go in with some gouache, and I am going to add sea foam over those portions and those really harsh lines where the reflection is meeting the sand, and it's going to kind of soften that out. Okay, so now that we got all all that gouache down for the seafoam, we're going to add some starfish. I am adding in a lavender color. It's almost like a pink. This is another color I really like. And then we're going in with a hot pink, and that's going to be a smaller starfish in the distance, just to kind of help with some movement and dimension as if it's disappearing up the beach. And then we're going to add a purple starfish. The fun part with this is you could add any colors you want. You don't have to use the colors that I'm using. You could just do the same concept, because I'm using some very basic brush strokes here just to kind of blend it out. And then we're going to add some more details here in a minute on the starfish. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I am just adding some dimension and some shading to the starfish. So rule of thumb is when you add shading, you want to go 1 or 2 steps darker than the base color that you have, so it looks natural. So for example, with that dark pink, I'm going in with like a maroon, and then the purple like a deep violet. That's all I'm doing here. I feel like that just helps the starfish look like they're actually laying on the beach. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I am just going to add some more details on the starfish, and I'm adding the tops of them. So I'm just going in with the color that we used to shade each starfish to do this. It's pretty straightforward. So here I am just kind of deepening up the parts of the seafoam that's hitting the beach, and I'm just going back in with that maroon / wine color. And another tip is adding more water is going to make the color more sheer, and then less water is going to make the watercolor darker. So we want to add some value to the sand, and what I'm doing is I'm going in with a really, really light gray purple, kind of like the gray purple that we used when we were laying down that portion where the reflection meets the sand, so the sand looks like it's wet. And I'm just going to do some irregular shapes all over that sand base. There really doesn't have to be any rhyme or reason. You don't have to do it exactly like mine, just as long as you're getting the correct color and water ratio. Again, just when I do my water ratios, when I pick up color like in dip, I just swipe front and back, and that gives me the right consistency. This takes practice. When I very first started this, my watercolors looked nothing like what they do now. So just give it time, you guys. It'll come to you. So now what I'm doing is I am grabbing some yellow gouache, and if you don't have this palette, this is the Hemi Jelly Gouache palette. It's okay. You could literally just mix yellow and white with a little dollop of brown, and you'll get this like creamy custard banana yellow. I grab this color a lot in my paintings because I feel like it just adds a glow. On my underwater scenes, I absolutely love this color on pearls, but I feel like this looks really nice on the starfish, as if the little band of sun that's coming up onto the beach is kind of hitting them. And it also softens up some of those harsh lines that we may have had from the watercolor. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I'm just going in with a regular white gouache, and I am adding details to the starfish. This is really straightforward and easy. You just take little dollops of the white and dab it on there. The trick with gouache is you want to make sure that you have enough water for it to distribute. If it's a little too dry, it tends to look chunky on the paper, but the beauty with gouache is that it reactivates, so you don't have to really worry too much about that. When I first started painting, I used acrylic in all of my pieces, and now I absolutely hate acrylic. Like, it is not something I ever grab unless I'm doing a mini painting on a canvas. Gouache is my best friend. A lot of my pieces involve watercolor and gouache. I've also done straight gouache paintings, and it comes out really vibrant, and I highly recommend these Hemi Jelly Gouache palettes. They are great. Okay, so we are going to add some shadows here underneath the starfish, and I grabbed a gray and brown and I mixed those two together. I like to add gray to a lot of browns if I'm doing shadows because I feel like it really cools it down. Brown would have been fine. Like, if that's what you have and that's what you have to work with, that'll work out just fine, but I really do like to mix gray. And the gray that I used is a really light gray. You don't want to drown out that brown, because sometimes if you use too much gray or too dark of a gray, it tends to look muddy. And because this is a lighter painting and it's morning painting, we want to use lighter colors. Okay, so to add some more value to the sand so it doesn't look so flat with the beige and the shadows, I'm going in with that kind of banana custard yellow gouache again, and I am just feeding it in between those shadows and those shapes that we laid down in the starfish. And I also feel like this helps add a glow to the sand. And the parts that are farther away that might be catching some of that pink sunrise, we're going to be throwing in some pink gouache. And again, if you don't have this palette, it's fine. Just mix some red, just a little drop of red with white, and you'll get that light baby pink, and it should work out just fine. Okay, so now we are going to add in some waves, so those bands of purple where the horizon is and blue don't look so harsh. And again, that same rule of thumb is we want to throw down a color that is maybe 1 shade or 2 shades darker than the base layer that we put down, so that when it dries, it's a lot softer, it looks more natural. And it's okay if the lines look kind of messy at first. We're gonna blend that out with our brush. And again, when you blend, you really don't want to use any pressure. And here I am going in with my white gouache, not my white, my yellow gouache. And this is kind of gonna be where the sun is hitting the tops of those waves. And notice how I put the gouache on top of the lines and not below the lines, so that kind of gives it movement. And here we go with some white. Notice how I'm kind of like dabbing it instead of actually like swiping it onto the paper. I feel like that kind of helps look like ripples and sparkles. And because it's such a sheer white, it's not super harsh, and it looks like the water is just kind of glowing. And I really concentrate that white where the sun is going to be. All right, so to get the sun, it's so straightforward. We're mixing white with that custard yellow, and then we are going to also put that on the waves because it's going to look like the sun is hitting it, and then also the top of that sea foam in the back right there. And you can see how that already tied up so much of the painting. Again, love gouache. It's my best friend. And then I'm adding some more accents where I feel like I need it. Okay, so now we are gonna kind of work on the final part of the painting, and we are going to add the clouds. So I am throwing in some of that lilac pink over the band of pink that we have in the sky right there, and yellow. And when I do clouds for sunsets, I just do really irregular swipes and shapes because clouds are never uniform. And again, clouds have always been something that I've had a really hard time with. I feel like my top 3 most challenging things are clouds, sand, and water. And it's ironically like the only thing that I paint and I'm still getting the hang of it. But you can kind of see that, you know, when you kind of throw in those different shapes, it looks more natural, as if you're looking at a fresh morning sunset. So yeah, I'm just going in with that pink, and then up here I am mixing that wine color maroon with a blue, and it's gonna look darker as the clouds get higher, and obviously the clouds closest to the sun are going to be the lightest. Okay, so I'm happy with how that looks, and we are just going to remove our masking tape. When I do this, I lightly peel. You don't want to peel it all off like a big band-aid because sometimes it'll rip up the paper. I've actually ruined paintings like that. So you just want to lightly peel it off, and then obviously sign your artwork. So that concludes today's tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next time.